Welcome back to Cody and the Cinema, and today I'm excited to cover the 1990 Arnold Schwarzenegger classic, Kindergarten Cop. And if you're unfamiliar with this story, it begins in a mall, and Arnold is playing John Kimball, a tough, gruff, mean, needs a shave kind of fella, and he's up here in the mall up on a upper story. And the guy he's looking for, Mr. Crisp, the drug overlord guy, is down here at another part of the mall. And he chases him, and then there's a dead guy, some stuff happens. And as a result of those opening scenes where Arnold is just full of good one-liners, I mean, those are some of his best one-liners I've ever heard. He finds out that he's going to have to track down an ex-lover of Mr. Crisp, who is located in a elementary school in this town in Oregon. And as part of this process, he has to take on a partner, which he is none too happy about at first. And Phoebe, his partner, has experience working as a teacher, so the idea is that she's going to go undercover as a kindergarten teacher substitute, and he's going to kind of work behind the scenes. They're going to find this ex-wife. The ex-wife of Mr. Crisp is going to make some testimony statements. She's going to get immunity. Everything's going to be happy-go-lucky, hunky-dory, and Mr. Crisp is going to be in jail, and Arnold can go back to arresting drug lords and other various criminals. The problem is Phoebe gets really sick, and she does a good job with that part of her role. That actress is so good in this as a partner to Arnold. She sounds like a seasoned teacher, which I appreciate. And he has to become the kindergarten teacher, thus Kindergarten Cop. And that is where we get set up with some of the best, most original comedy of the 90s. And you can tell just right away, like in the opening shot of him meeting these little kids, the camera is like ridiculously high over them, and they're terrified at first, but then they quickly realize that he's kind of afraid of them, and they can smell the fear, If you've ever been in a classroom, kids can smell the fear. Oh, they're just waiting on something to pounce on. And it takes them a little while to kind of get used to the process of becoming a teacher. Of all the movies I've ever seen about education and teaching, this is one of the very few that actually gets it right. So what is successful with these kids isn't a bunch of quippy inspirational quotes. It's not a well-delivered speech at the right time that enables their innate curiosity. It's not that. It's these procedures. It's these regular expectations. It's this sense that someone is actually in control, but in a way that they can understand with a little bit of good complimenting going on. And more than anything else, it's a confidence from their teacher. And that is a tough thing to learn. To learn that you have to sell yourself to kids. You have to make something that they can understand that's also very much you. Now, me as a teacher, I have a very certain persona that I use, and it's not for everybody, but it is authentic, and I've found that the more I lean into my personality, which is kind of dry, and I wear black literally every day, the more I kind of lean into that, the better it goes. Now, for Arnold, he can't wave guns around and cuss at the kids or whatever, but when he takes his police mind and his structured mind and he finds a way to break that down for them, he becomes a pretty effective teacher. A mostly effective teacher. There's some things that he shouldn't do, but it's the 90s, whatever. Something that when I've read about this, critics have been pretty split on this. I was expecting to go through and look at Roger Ebert's review and for him to hate it, but he actually kind of liked it. He talked about how it really shouldn't work, but it does. And for how ridiculous the movie is at times, it actually does work. And I suspect it's because of what I've been talking about with the teachers and so forth. So the critics that were split on this, the critics that didn't like this at the time, and why I think it has kind of that middle of the road critical rating, is because I think at the time in the 90s, if you go back and look at what was out back then, it was like all these dumb comedies. Like, I made up one in my head. I made up a script in my head called Dishwasher Mom that could have been released in the 90s. And here's what happens in my cheesy 80s, 90s comedy. Okay, the dishwasher floods, and the whole movie is about how the house continues to flood, and dad's got like a rowboat downstairs in the basement, and he's just ignoring it, and toys are floating, and then mom's like pulling her hair, and like that's the level of comedy that a lot of stuff, that's the level of a lot of the 80s, 90s comedy. And I think that people were burnt out on concepts like this, especially critics who had to go to the movies so often. And so they saw this as just another dumb comedy. And it's not. There's a good bit more heart to it than that. And also, some people had some objections to how dark this gets. Like, they would say it's too silly to kind of be a movie for grown-ups. That's not true. I've already covered why I believe it holds up well and why I believe it has good messages to teach. But also, they didn't like how dark it went, and I think that the fact that there are, multiple instances of like serious issues being put on screen, I don't really want to spoil those. I think that works in the film's favor a little bit, even if it goes a little far in the end. I mean, it does get kind of like that end scene in the bathroom gets a little rough, But overall, I really like the movie, and I think it's held up well. I think it's one of his best. What do you think about Kindergarten Cop? My suspicion is you'll love it as much as I do. Let me know in the comments, and we'll see you next time.